Welcome back. The B-BBEE Commission says empowerment regulations have not removed the obligation for organs of state and public entities to implement the B-BBEE Act and its requirements concerning preferential procurement. The Commission's reaction comes a week after some state-owned entities were thought to be allowed to drop BEE requirements at their discretion in some instances. Joining us now to explain the Commission's position is Lindiwe Madonsela, who is a Senior Manager for Compliance at the Broad-Based Economic Empowerment Commission. Lindiwe, thank you for making time. As the Commission, what do you understand to be the changes to the preferential procurement regulations that were gazetted?
Okay, so as the B-BBEE Commission, I think for us, when we look at the PPFA regulations, it presents an opportunity for organs of state to now properly implement the requirements that are within the codes of good practice that are issued in terms of the B-BBEE legislation. Reason being that part of the codes, and particularly when we look at the element around enterprise and supply development, that element contains the preferential procurement scorecard, which is what, when organs of state and public entities are procuring, needs to follow, and that will ensure that they comply with the B-BBEE legislation.
Mm-hmm. So I want us to look at what the regulations were and what the new proclamation is. From what you understand, the regulations previously, did they specify that organs of state could disqualify bidding companies if they were not 100% black-owned?
Okay, so we need to understand a few things in terms of the B-BBEE legislation to be able to respond to the issue around disqualification if they were not 100% black-owned. So when you look at the 2017 PPFA, it included what we call pre-qualification criteria, and that pre-qualification criteria looked at procuring from only EMEs and QSEs, or only procuring from entities that are 51% black-owned, which was set as part of your tendering process. Then you also had the 80-20 and the 90-10 system, which currently will still apply, and then the 20 and the 10 will look at the B-BBEE level status. Now, our understanding of the PPFA regulations of 2017, it did not exclude anyone from bidding or responding to an opportunity to be having procurement opportunity from an organ of state or public entity. It simply meant that if you were not B-BBEE compliant, you would then forfeit the points that would be allocated to you, that those points were available for B-BBEE. For example, if it was an 80-20 or procurement opportunity, if you are B-BBEE non-compliant, you will forfeit the 20 points, and then you'll only be assessed based on functionality as well as pricing. Now, it did not mean that you will disqualify entities if they are not 100% black-owned, except if you had set a pre-qualification criteria. Maybe that pre-qualification criteria was saying that procuring only from exempted micro-enterprises, which are entities with a turnover of less than 10 million. So it means that every bidder will first have to satisfy that requirement. If your pre-qualification would have been 51% black ownership, it means every bidder will first have to be presenting or qualifying with that pre-qualification criteria. Now, we then know the history around what happened, the court judgment, first the Supreme Court of Appeal, then later on the Constitutional Court, which then brought us to the 2022 PPFA regulations.
Yeah, so and according to the 2022 PPFA regulations, the pre-qualification criteria, as you've indicated, that still stands. What about the forfeiting of the points, right? From the new regulations that were promulgated, are companies who are not compliant going to forfeit the points as well?
Okay, remember, that's the understanding that you are going to be forfeiting the points, because when you look at the 2022 regulations, they are now saying organs of state and public entities, when it comes to the 20 points under 2080 procurement principle and the 10 points under the 90-10 principles, must set a specific goal. Then it goes on to define what that specific goal can be, and it indicates that that specific goal could be procuring from persons that were, or categories of persons that were historically disadvantaged on the basis of race, on the basis of gender. Yeah. Now, when we look at and trying to link it now to the B-BBEE legislation, the B-BBEE legislation mandates organs of state, when you look at Section 10, that whenever an organ of state is determining a qualification for the preferential procurement, it must take into account the relevant codes of good practice, meaning that we must procure from entities that are B-BBEE compliant. Now, further to that, the B-BBEE legislation then gives guidance in terms of how are you going to break down your procurement spend that you are going to implement. It does indicate that 80% you spend with entities that are B-BBEE compliant. And that B-BBEE compliance, for example, it looks at level 8 up until level 1. Then it also cascades down to look at the various categories, procuring from EMEs, qualifying small enterprises, as well as 51% black-owned entities.
All right. Lindiwe Madonsela, Senior Manager for Compliance at the Broad-Based Economic Empowerment Commission. Thank you for making time for us.